Hello, my name is Faridah Gbadamosi, and I am a programmer for Seattle this year, and I'm very excited to have joined this particular program and also to be here for this really what will be an amazing roundtable discussion. I'm very excited that I'm here with the filmmakers from TOPSIDE, Celine Held and Logan George. And
Hi.
then hi. And then we also have the filmmakers from I'm Fine, Thanks for Asking, Angelique, Molina, and Kelley Kali.
Hey, I messed you up. I know. I'm sorry.
It's all good. All
You
right. So the
nailed it.
first question I kind of want to ask both film teams is kind of what inspired your films? What led to not just the act of making your film, like what led to wanting to make this film, and then also the topic of your films. And then we will start with the team from Topside.
Okay. So we have been writing our film for a very long time. I was actually working at through Jumpstart AmeriCorps at a kindergarten on the Lower East Side during college, which in a school that was a lot of kids who were low income, and a child was taken away one day by Child Protective Services at the school. And we didn't know it at the time, but we found out later that his mom had been applying for jobs and marking she had a dependent and marking that she had no permanent place to live, which is illegal to have your child in a school under a false zip code in New York. So Child Protective Services, ACS, took this little boy, and his mom came at the end of the day, and I'll just never forget how she reacted when she realized that her son was gone. That super affected me. And I just started doing more research on homelessness in New York and in the US, but especially in New York, which just seems to be this totally hidden issue. Logan and I ended up making a couple of documentary series on homeless mothers and children and homelessness on the streets of New York. And all of this fed into this story about the tunnels. We've been down to the tunnels a lot, and this story just started to unfold where we felt like we could tell through a cinematic lens, a story that was prevalent in a lot of the people that we've met.
Yeah.
All right. And then same question for the team from I'm Fine, Thanks for Asking.
So this came about in the middle of the summer during the pandemic. So we had all been on lockdown for a while, and I just woke up with this very pressing need to make something, to create. And I called my girls, Angelique, Molina, and my co-director, and Roma Kong, our co-producer, and then my writing partner, Dion Cole, and our other producer, Capella Fahum. But I went to my girls first and said, hey, we need to do something. And I got my stimulus check and some unemployment, and maybe we could get a short going or something. And I said, I got a few resources in the town that I'm from here in like outskirts of Los Angeles, the Valley, San Fernando Valley. And, maybe we could use whatever resources we have. And they agreed to the short film. But then after we hung up, I called right back and was like, hey, you know what, we're masters of short films. Like, we've been doing that. So why don't we try for a feature? And they thought I was crazy, but they were just as crazy as me. So they jumped on board and we did it. So that together we all started discussing what were the issues surrounding us today. Because I know for Angelique's body of work and my body of work, we always tend to focus on social issues within the world around us. And so we knew from the jump that that's probably what we would explore. And we came to the notion of houselessness, which is those people who are just like that one paycheck short. You might end up on a friend's couch or your family's couch, or you might be in the car, or you might end up in a tent on the streets temporarily, but you might have a job, or you might have something. You're just that one little step away from having a physical roof over your head. And so we noticed that there was more women on the streets. And so that was something that we all sat down to explore.
One of the things that I guess going back more to like structure and what led to the film, both the pandemic has kind of played a role in both how Topside has been released and then also in like the literal making of I'm Fine, Thanks for Asking. So so you spoke a little bit about how the pandemic affected your how you made the film. You made it during the pandemic. So like what were some of the things that you were thinking about when you were planning out the film and thinking of the pandemic, how you folded that into the story? And then I will pivot to asking Topside, what was it like building a film and having a clear idea of what you may have wanted to do with it, and then having the pandemic happen? With how did that change your approach to releasing the film? So like for I'm Fine, Thanks for Asking, you knew that you were in a pandemic when you were going to release this film. So that kind of, that came with the process of making the film. With Topside, you didn't quite know that. So like what was that process for both of you? So I'm going to start with I'm Fine, Thanks for Asking.
So, I mean, it definitely was the guiding force because we knew that we had to be safe and tell that story in a safe way. And that's how we started off with, like, we want to tell this story outside, essentially. Like a lot of things, I would say most of the film is outside. We have some things that are inside because we made it work, but that was the guiding force, like literally just writing it like, okay, this person, she has to go here, she has to go there. Like we knew we were going to be outside. And we included, you know, Kelley's background in skating because we're like, okay, this is her transportation because we're not going to be on a bus during COVID. We're not going to be in an Uber during COVID. Like there were a lot of things that literally forced us to not go a path we might have normally gone in our storytelling process because of COVID. So it was definitely part of, you know, how we had to maneuver in a very parallel way with, you know, staying safe with COVID. And it definitely guided the story in a certain way. And I think that's how it started because we were like, well, this character is going to be outside in some way. How is this, you know, where do we go from here?
And that's why also the cast is the majority is crew, because we had to keep it, we knew that we had to keep to 10 or less to try to be as safe as we can because we were shooting in the height of the pandemic during the summer. And so that was a discussion we all had, was that, well, we can't hold casting because we don't want to put anyone at risk that's like not in our circle and willing to take this risk. So we all, that's how we all got in front of the camera, was just out of necessity. And then with a few additional actors for the roles that we ran out of crew for. And they were close friends. So everybody in this it's within our circle of safety, our bubble.
Great. And then for the team from Topside, you had a film that you completed, and then you had to change the way that you released or told this story. So like what went into thinking about that process, and like what were some of the surprising changes? Some of them were positive, I guess, changes that came from that switch.
Well, yeah, we had finished the edit, and we were actually in our final day of sound mixing the film when South by was canceled, which is where the film was first going to go. So our premiere was like, so the film was really at a completed space, and so we'd lost that potential, you know, premiere, but we sort of still felt like we were in this place of like we had to be so thankful that we at least got it over and like had something completed, because so many of our peers were just about to start production or were in the middle of production and had to be completely shut down. So it was a little bit of I think, you know, there was a lot of like sadness in sort of being able to like not be able to present it, because we were, you know, you want to sort of have a premiere to be able to feel like that's like it's a culmination, yeah, of the moment. Yeah. But so it's really been this like slow burn of like having this film that's completed, but there haven't, you know, it's been
we had our premiere was at Venice Film Festival, which never would have accepted us if we had premiered at South by. Yeah. So that was really cool. However, we didn't go to Venice because none of the American directors who got into Venice were at Venice. We were the only US film in the Critiques Week section, which was so cool. And we all of the other filmmakers were not from the US, so all of them attended in our competition, which was a big bummer because we just feel like we never actually got to connect with any of them in a really meaningful way, which can happen at festivals. And so many of our connections in general of the filmmakers we collaborate with today and our producers.
Born out of like the festival experience and like being able to But yeah, the idea of flying over there just felt unsafe and unwarranted, and that it would sort of get drowned in, you know, that would be the ultimate experience too. But they really had a festival over there, which was amazing.
That was crazy.
And we got to experience it from afar.
Yeah, my aunt went, because I have family in Italy, and so she went to Venice and she took all these photos. Like she was, because there's no one there basically. She was like on the red carpet. She like snuck onto, and like the lion and everything, and in the theater. And then our connectivity for talk back on Venice is broken. Yeah. And so I called her on WhatsApp and she put the phone at the microphone, and that's how we did our talk back. So I don't know, the bunch of funny stories, I guess, came out of it, but ultimately it's like this stop and start thing. But for our financiers wanted us to premiere when we had finished the film, which was South by, and we were so grateful to get in. But it was really a cool silver lining to go to a festival like Venice with it.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll have really good news soon about it coming out in theaters this summer.
Yeah.
Oh, before I ask more questions, and I have tons of them, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom. Just a heads up to everyone who's watching. I have a niece, the joys of Zooming from home.
That's so appropriate for our stories, you know, because we all have like little girls in our stories.
Yes, that's my next question. I was wondering, because both of your films have these wonderful young actors, I was wondering how you found them for your films. We'll start with Topside, sorry.
Yeah, Shayla, she's absolutely amazing. And we actually met her a whole year before we went into production, just because we had lost financing as part of that process. But she is part of a family of 5 kids, and she's just like an absolute spark. And she was actually one of the first kids that we saw. And we just sort of knew that it was her for a really, really long time, watched a lot of people after that, and always knew that it was going to be her. We worked with her a lot, spent a lot of time with her. Celine, you know, spent like days on end with the family.
We rewrote the whole script to suit who she is, and we are very into children not memorizing lines. We just feel like children are magic, and we want to give them an environment where we can give them stimuli to respond to, and not force any words that don't feel natural on their tongue. So the whole thing with the wings and stuff, like that's something Shayla and I talked about for like a year in advance, and you know, discovered and developed together. Logan and I picked all the kids up from school like 2 or 3 times a week throughout the year, and just talked to their mom on the phone yesterday. So like still like very active relationship, and super in love with the whole family. And we wouldn't have been able to make the film without them. And it was a total you know, chance. They walked into a church where our casting director Jennifer Venditti, she cast that role in particular, was doing an open call for Euphoria, and Shayla and her family happened to walk in, and she knew it was Little when she saw her.
Lovely. And then Angelique and Kelley, how did you find your young actress?
Wes was like just like a happy accident as well, even though, so we were trying to stick to our bubbles, right? And I have a nephew who's 3 years old, who we were like, okay, great, he's going to be the child, and we're going to do, you know, and the whole story was obviously going to be different if we had a 3-year-old. And we talked about that, like that's going to be challenging. And so we were trying to think of other people, you know, I was thinking of other nieces, but Kelley, her husband's close friend, they're family friends essentially, are the parents of Wes, who did such an amazing job and was perfect for the role, and ended up making the film even better and greater because of her contribution and, you know, who she was. And she looked like Kelley, and she, you know, she was old enough to to like understand the story, and like, you know, we tried to keep things away from her to like, you know, but she was just so witty and smart that she figured it out. She definitely knew what was going on and wanted to participate and collaborate in a way that like we didn't expect, and, you know, helped us grow.
Yeah, we were discussing, Angelique and I were like, maybe we should keep she really shouldn't know that she's homeless. Like she should just think we're camping, like for real, like, and not tell our child actor that. And she's like, she gets her little piece of script and her little sides and stuff like that, and she's like, are we homeless? Like me and Angelique were like,
we were like, let's break it
how
down.
she figure this out? Yeah, she's brilliant. And she used to, I remember since she was like 2 years old, her parents used to say, she looks more like your kid than ours. And so when we ended up looking for someone, she naturally came up.
Great. So that sounds absolutely, like, it sounds like both of these were really lovely collaborative relationships, and also just like really, like, it feels like I'm the word for like kismet, like a great match in terms of individuals who were casted in the films. Pivoting a little, what was it like to both direct and star in a film? Like, what was that process like? So I'm going to start with Kelley.
Well, it's my first time. So I'm constantly I get on these Q&As and then people start asking me acting questions, and I completely forgot I acted in it, because I'm constantly thinking as a director, because that's how we were trained. But for me, what kept me feeling safe and secure and able to fit into a role like this was Angelique, because I could trust her behind the camera. And I knew that, like, I didn't have to worry about the image or the composition or whatever it was. And then now I'm eyes from a perspective that you don't usually get as a director, because since we're a team, now you have eyes on the inside. So I'm able to see things that aren't working from the other side of the camera that she might have missed, that I can call, and then vice versa. She sees things that I can't see from being on the inside. So for me, it felt, all of it felt like a family. It didn't feel so much like a set, and so those nerves weren't really there for me, because I was surrounded by friends, and it just felt like we were having fun and trying to tell a story. So it never really dawned on me we were acting, it's like we were making something. Now, if I get cast by Spielberg somewhere, I bet you it'll be a whole nother experience. I would be nervous and it would feel like a set, but this felt like a family. And Angelique being there, because we've worked together for so many years from USC, like from day one, we're the same cohort. I know how she moves. She knows how I move. We're constantly thinking the same. We see it, and we don't even have to say it. We both know what it is we're thinking. And so she's what made it easy for me.
I would say mostly the same thing.
Celine worked harder than any.
No, that's not true.
There was like such a, I felt so, because I think also Celine took on a lot of work with Shayla as well, as far as, being in that space and cultivating that performance with her, because like Celine said, we wanted to leave Shayla just, to be responding to things as they occurred. So I just always felt like you had to work so hard to both like straddle that line between directing, but then also it's a very physical, like demanding performance as well, that you did such a good job at.
A lot of crying, just so much crying. It was a sizable crew. It was a union shoot, and then we did a lot of the film, don't tell the union, with like 5 people running around the train, and Logan pulled focus for the final shot, and like this is how we want to make movies. Our cinematographer, Lole Meyer, and our producer, Kara Durrett, have been with us through all of our shorts, are working with us on our next feature. Lole's actually shooting the project that we're doing right now, too, which is so cool. And I think that, without kind of that group around, but also I'm like fully never doing this again. I did this because our short film Caroline, that I act in, we did that was not on purpose also, because the kids and I have I just really love children. I love children. We don't have any children, but I love children in general. And we just had such a bond that it was like, why put a middleman?
Yeah.
Like, why have a middleman? So on Topside, we took that a step further. Me being cast in the role ended up being like a really integral part of like the whole equation in allowing financing to trust us to have a child be our protagonist.
Yeah.
And I wore an earpiece throughout the film, an earwig that Logan could communicate with me, so that he would tell me when things were in focus or not, or if camera needed another go, or if what Shayla, so when the camera's on Shayla, or like a 2-shot or something that's like 360, that I'm like completely there as though I'm behind monitor, and he's like really telling me like what's working and what's not.
It's just like you're saying, Kelley, like Celine being in there in the space too, like allows you to see things that you don't even necessarily see. And like we are able to have instant feedback and operate in like, because we do very, very long, you know, like impromptu takes of like
20 minute takes.
20 minute takes, just for the purposes of getting Shayla comfortable and not feeling like we're rolling, we're cutting, we're rolling, we're cutting, just like living and breathing in an environment.
360-degree environment.
Having that like earwig and being able to like in real time have Celine give Shayla some sort of, you know, stimuli to say something or tweak something else was like super essential, and was like the only reason we made our days with the kid hours of it all in a union space and all of that.
Shayla, we made
Earpiece next time, Kelley.
I know, I'm like, earpiece, genius.
It was a real game changer,
that was
honestly.
our sound mixer's idea.
Yeah,
Dennis,
it was huge.
Super smart.
Kelley, would you do it again? Would you direct and act in something again?
Yeah. It's hard, man. That mess is hard. It depends on what it is. If it's a story that's really dear to me, that like I feel like it's kind of what Celine just said. Like she knew, like, look, I can do this. That she has a history with previous films. She's excellent at it. I mean, Caroline was excellent. So like that, it makes sense, right? So like if it makes sense, yeah. But you know, I'm a director. Like I enjoy it. What's that, League?
I said I was in one scene and was losing my mind. Like,
you did great
at the same time.
I love that both of you are like really not sure about doing it again, but both of you were absolutely amazing. So good in your films. So I think it's like, it's a waste. Like, do it again.
It depends on what it is, really. Like I'm not gonna say no, but it has to be something that's gonna pull me from behind the camera again, because I just love just directing so much, you know, and doing both. You are split. And so it really does help to have a comrade that is going to be the other half of you, so that you have a whole director, or at least a whole 1.5, you know? So, so that, yeah, that's an interesting question. I can't say for sure.
So I'm gonna dive a little bit more into the story. So one of the things that I found really interesting about Topside, we get kind of a period of time in which we don't know how much time is really passing. And then we have this one harrowing night, kind of like really, and so I wanted to know a little bit more about like telling the story in that particular timing way. And then what went into like really the night when they did go topside, and like how did that filming process go? And then I'll start there first.
Yeah, I mean, we always knew that, you know, because it was all underground, you aren't gonna have the sun to sort of communicate that time of day, and because it was always going to be from Little's perspective, that it was always going to sort of feel amorphous about how much time you were tracking, and that was the idea, because we feel like for her as well and what she's living through, it is an amorphous amount of time of like when you're sleeping and when you're waking up in relation to the time of day. It's all so elusive. So that was sort of intentional in the edit, and sort of some of those like more montagey bits in the first 20 minutes.
Logan edited our film. He edits all of our work.
Logan.
Wow, wearing many hats over here.
It was 96 hours of footage. Anyway.
Yeah, all those 15-minute takes were really fun to
they added up.
Parse through.
But finding those little moments where I think it felt like, you know, just that was the amount of time. In the initial film, in the initial script, there was a montage that we ended up using as bits and pieces to tell to time more.
Yeah.
Because we felt like when it was just a montage that it was so unclear that it made it feel like it could have been a month. And we wanted it to have more of a
sort of just like that the stakes of, you know, them being dislocated were sort of immediately present, and it was about those few days leading up to it. And then I think part of the, like, what we were trying to cultivate overall is that sense of desperation and
winter.
Yeah, the winter, and so it just made sense that the rest of the film played out in real time, and that there was no sort of like huge leaps to a time in the future or anything like that. It was supposed to that we were there, you know, feeling that desperation in the moment with them. There was no point where it was ever like anything else during the script or drafts of it, or where we considered sort of like cutting ahead or having flashbacks or anything like that. We really wanted you to feel like ground and trapped just like them in that night.
And you definitely feel that moment. It raises the stakes in a way as you're kind of like watching, because you know, because you feel like it'll hit some sort of head within that space of time. You don't have enough time for it to do it. You could just feel that tension building. And I thought that was extremely well done.
I think also because of like Little's memories, that idea of it being this like blur, and like, you know, so much of what she's seen is like very familiar to her, that it was like cultivating this very like fluid sense of all this imagery at the beginning, but then she's hyper aware of everything, you know, once they go topside. And so that sort of determined that too.
I think, I mean, like knowing that you edited the film, it was just really stunningly done. The playing with time and how that worked, and everything you just said literally came across. So well, that was fantastic.
Especially when they went topside. The way you cut that, it was so stressful. I felt Little's stress, and it was in the editing. I mean, the performances too, but it definitely in the editing. So
the sound design, I would have to tip my hat to
Yeah,
like that.
David Forshee
and Joanna Fang.
And Joanna Fang, who did a lot of Foley for it. They were both so great and worked really hard on it, because, you know, it was the last piece of the puzzle, but we always knew that the sound was going to be so important to her sort of worldview and that the cacophony, you know, of so many different moments in the film. So there's a lot going on in there. It's sort of one of the things that is really tricky about this, is because it's like it's mixed for the theatrical environment, and so we're really excited for people to get a chance to sort of see it in a theatrical setting at some point, because I think the sound is like that much richer in that capacity.
We know that people have watched it on their computer, and it makes us sad in our
Yeah,
hearts.
there's like,
but it's okay. We know that people are gonna watch it on their phone, maybe, or like artwork in the future. So something we have to get used to. It's gonna be fun.
It's cool.
That's hard. Yeah, I get it.
Well, I mean, I saw it on a screen, and I felt like I got the full sound design, if that makes you feel
good.
And then Angelique and Kelley, you also have a film that kind of plays with time. The entirety of the film takes place within a day. Was that always the plan for the film? Because it also creates this sense of urgency, this moment of, you have to solve this by the end of the day, as the stakes continue to get worse, and you're trying to find an answer to getting that last bit of money to put the money down. Was that always how you imagined the story to go?
Totally, yeah. I mean, the only time that we kind of don't know where time went is when she falls into the water. Because that kind of just happens, and when she wakes up, you don't really know what has happened since and how much time has passed. You know, Brooklyn has gotten her hair braided, and we know that takes a while. Like, it's, that's the only like chunk where we were like, let people, you know, think whatever happened during that time. But yes, there was a sense of urgency that we needed to happen, and that one day was definitely purposeful.
Yeah, and also our resources.
Right.
We didn't have enough, you know, resources to have any type of constant costume change, or to have like it's just that when you shoot over multiple days, it in the story, it can add up versus you sticking to one day. So it's also was cost effective for what we were doing.
And at the time we got like backed up by people like mid-production. So we went in wanting to make something as simple as possible.
Yeah.
And then we got like help.
Yeah. It was a if you build it, they will come situation where like we definitely did not do this on a stimulus check, but we started it on one, and then so people saw what we were doing and they came. But it's this definitely was a grassroots love. So having a story that is all in one day really helped us to just keep it compact and efficient, and also creates a ticking time bomb, which is great for story.
I was really curious about that dream sequence of her falling through because it's such a departure, it's such a beautiful sequence that you guys managed to capture, and especially considering what you guys are saying about like how you guys made this film, like how did that come about, and like at what point in making it did you guys write this, or was that because of someone who wanted to contribute that sort of sequence was born?
Expensive sequence.
Yeah. Oh yeah, take it away, Leek. Tell them how it happened.
Well, so we knew that she was getting high at a certain point in the process of telling the story, and we're not like, Kelley and I don't really do that. So
well, yeah, high like on like it's laced like an LSD or something. We were doing research. We're like, so what kind of trips?
I was asking friends.
Calling friends.
I literally called a cousin and was like, hey, what environment would she end up in? And she literally was like, you need to be in nature, you need to be in water, you need to be in, the trees, whatever. And we were like, well, we have access to water. My uncle has a pool. And it literally evolved with what resources we have and what part of the story we're trying to tell. So when we knew we were trying to tell a certain part of the story where she's hitting rock bottom, we had to match our resources. So we had a pool, but we also we wanted her in nature. We wanted her in water. We wanted her to be thinking about what was going on in front of her and feeling kind of just literally drowning. Yeah. So they kind of blended together of like needing to tell a part of the story and then what we had to tell that story.
And we also wanted, because we knew this was run and gun, we knew that we were like tangerining this a lot. We wanted something to slow it down and just have a moment and to be this beautiful centerpiece. And like Angelique said, well, we had that resource. We knew that we could pull it off. We bought some old skates, made them look like the star skates that are right there. And jumped in that water and froze our butts off it was our first day of production. It was the first thing we shot. And Angelique, which you guys might not know, she's also a DP. So Angelique jumped in the water and took the camera too. So our DP, Becky Chen, and then also one of our other, we had so many DPs, I'll say, Xing Mai, he actually shot Lalo's house, the one that was at Telluride with you guys. He was there to help us with the visual effects portion of this. And so he was there. And then Angelique also, she took the camera and got underwater, and she could hold her breath really long with me. So she was just, because we know each other. Angelique was just moving all around and just getting all these shots. And so just together, it made it beautiful. It was painful. It hurt a lot.
It hurt. Yeah, it
was my eyes burned for days.
Very old Los Angeles pool that you can't build anymore because it's illegal now. But
super deep,
very deep pool that like, well, it worked out for us because we were able to feel like we're not just like, at the top of the water, but
I know that it felt really like legitimate and vast in a really big way.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it wasn't like that expensive. We were able to pull it off. We got a black mat that we dropped in behind. We got a water casing for our camera.
DP, well, not the DP, my actually wanted more. We were like,
oh yeah,
what you're gonna get.
We're like, this is what we have. You could get a Home Depot light. We did. Angelique was like, can you get the lights from Home Depot though?
I mean, we had to light the outside of the pool anyway.
To get the,
So we also had a certain vision of like wanting to contrast these bright colors with her darkest space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And opposite, where it's like these yellows and these pinks and blah, blah, blah. And then we're having this bluish, darkish time where it's the opposite of literally her world, because she is at her lowest there. And, she doesn't know where to go from there. And she's like, all these things are happening. She's thinking about her daughter with the bear and then the money and the,
ring and
her husband with the ring. Yeah. So we wanted a space to, like you said, slow down, and have her kind of just evaluate her life in that moment, even though she's high.
And another part of the story is that blues, if you watch it, blues and greens are danger colors, warning colors, problem colors. So whenever like you see like Brooklyn's characters in green, like all the problem people were in blue or green. And so the water being so very blue was to foreshadow the problem of the ring to come, because it leads right into that. So it worked out great, the underwater sequence.
You're good.
Yeah. So that I think it's really interesting that that you have both teams had people who were kind of doing double duty sort of in different parts of the film, but also just like these moments that kind of like this. Well, I mean, you said it was your first day of production, so like what was it like the rest of the film, I guess, after shooting that? Like how was the rest of the shoot? Like how long was your shoot, I guess, for that particular process for that film?
We shot in,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, in 14 days. And then we got pickups, an additional 5 days of pickups. We had to fly. We didn't have a lot of time because we had goals of hitting the festival deadlines too, you know? So all of us who got on here were like, well, we want to get this out to festivals. So we all had to, our editors, Angelica Lopez and Katie McLeland, like they flew like lightning. We fed, like we were giving them the dailies every day, and they were cutting stuff as we were going along. So it wasn't a long time, but it was taxing. It was hard. It was a hard 14.
It was, yeah. And we started off in the pool where we thought we would have it heated. And the heater was on, but because we had this tarp blocking the filter,
it blocked
it.
it.
Was an ice box. And we were just freezing until 1 o'clock in the morning underneath the water, just cold, and our eyes burning. Even though I had goggles on, my eyes are burning. Kelley didn't have goggles on. She drove home and couldn't see and didn't tell us.
Don't tell nobody that. No, that didn't happen. Everybody drive home safely. Don't.
Yeah, please drive home safely. After that, we had like a 2-day break before we started shooting again. And it just happened to be like work out that, you know, somebody wasn't available or something, and we couldn't shoot immediately the next day. So we had like a day or a day and a half until we shot the next stuff. And we needed that so badly because we were physically like hurting after that pool scene, the water scene. It was rough, but we made it work.
I mean, as was already mentioned, the scene was done extremely well. And I think it kind of does slow the film down a bit and give you a moment to kind of reflect on what has happened and what clearly is likely to happen next, like what's going to be moving on next. Another thing that I thought was relatively interesting that was actually similar for both of your films, there wasn't any external family that we met. Like there wasn't any like kind of well, I mean, maybe we just don't we don't know if they exist or don't exist, but within the context of these people's lives, like there's no grandmother or other family that often gets like baked into often stories of people who are houseless. So I wanted to know what went into that particular choice. And we'll start with the team from TOPSIDE.
It wasn't true to the experience that we had found in the documentary work we did.
And for Little's perspective too, like we didn't want to be feeding so much exposition into the audience and sort of giving them an understanding of what their history was, so that people could sort of be like, oh, okay, I understand why this is befallen this
I can
family.
put this in a box. I can understand this, like, you know.
It sort of felt really right to start people off in the tunnel and have like so little information be fed to them and leave them in the dark, you know, but of sort of leaning into the story and trying to piece stuff together and really engaging, but for Little, that's very normal and that's her life. So it didn't feel honest for us to be sort of dealing out exposition about their backstory. And so as we were writing it, and when we got to a place where we were really happy with the script, it actually just felt like really important and like a really strong choice to purposefully avoid Nikki's backstory and to leave it incredibly, you know, like paper thin as far as like what's happened, because I think it sort of just like allows you to really engage with those questions and think about what it is, as opposed to like what Celine's saying, like us being able to like tie it up in a bow and be like, oh, okay, I know why why you have to live like this now, you know.
But also like this is you know, we're still in touch with a lot of the families that we worked with on our documentary work of mothers and children in shelters, and there's just a lot of distrust that happens with organizations in general. We've been in court with a family that was fighting for their children to be returned to them in the summer of 2018, and we're present when ACS, Child Protective Services in New York, said things that were not true on the stand about a family that we'd known for a few months. Mm-hmm. And these things, you know, really hit home in a way where this family has no one else to lean on, has no one else to advocate for them. And that type of distrust we really wanted to show in the film with Nikki, in not being able to rely on anyone. And I think when you grow up in the foster system, it is really hard to trust anyone. And who Nikki is based off of, she's based off of a few women that I met and have spent a lot of time with and am still in contact with today. These women don't have relationships with their mothers or with their fathers. And now one of them is like trying to rebuild it, but it like takes a long time for someone who maybe was never meant to be a mother when they gave birth or wasn't ready to be a mother yet. Giving birth does not make you a mother. And I think that kind of understanding of what love is and figuring out how to love and learning how to love when you yourself maybe haven't been loved is like this type of story that we wanted to tell.
And then for Angelique and Kelley, was it more of a budgetary thing, but was it or was it one of those situations where it was because I kind of love that there's not a lot of clarity on why they're in this situation, but like but it's just that they had to get out of it, which I also felt like Topside was like also not trying to give any clear, as you said, exposition for how they got there. They're just in it. So I thought that was a great similarity. So I was just like, Kelley and Angelique, was that something that you were also going for?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about like people being in that situation and how even at our lowest, there's always been some sort of support system. And, you know, whether it's family or friends, like if you felt close to not having something, you had somebody that was not going to let you, you know, be in that situation because you had the resources. Like, even if it's like, you know, take a lot of pride to engage with that, or like there was something there in terms of emotional support and literally physical support to like be able to put a roof over your head. So when having her not have anybody, like it was important to us for her to not have somebody to be able to be like, hey, can I crash on your couch? Because then she was in the situation where like she didn't have anybody. Her mother was out of town. Her husband was gone. Like you know, people around her didn't have anything either because they would have obviously offered her whatever they could. So yeah, I think it was purposeful that we didn't have a huge support system around her, including family. So we mentioned her husband, but we're not even clear as to how he's gone either. He's just gone. People have made assumptions about COVID and people have made assumptions about like how he passed away, but yeah, she doesn't have that support system. Not that she doesn't work hard, obviously, or that she wasn't trying to be able to take care of herself and her new family with her daughter. But yeah, not having family was purposeful.
Yeah. And then another part of our character is that she's prideful. Mm-hmm. She doesn't want to tell people that she's not fine. She doesn't want, it's embarrassing that she's in this situation. She hasn't been in the situation very long, maybe just a couple weeks, and she's going to be all right. So she doesn't really need everybody knowing her business right now. So even if people were to offer her something, it's not likely that she would take it unless she really trusts them, like she trusted that her husband's best friend. And then another thing, like with Sam, the husband, the dad, who we don't say how he died, we did that intentionally too, because there a lot during the pandemic, a lot of us have lost someone, whether it be from COVID, whether it be just from some other form of death, whether it be whatever it is, or someone you know, or a friend of a friend, everybody has been touched somehow. And we didn't want to we wanted Sam to represent loss.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to tell you what that loss is or how it is. We just wanted you to relate to loss. So we didn't want to exclude anyone by saying this is what the loss is. So we had discussed that, and we intentionally made the choice not to say how Sam died, because we want him to represent across the board, everyone's, yeah, whatever it is that loss you've experienced in your life, that is Sam.
I think both films sometimes when you watch something and you're given, as Celine said, a neat box to put these stories in, it kind of takes away from the characters and their individual journeys that you're watching, because you're too busy putting it in a box. And what I really appreciated about both these stories, which are dealing with similar situations but ultimately different circumstances, is each one of them, there's not clarity as to how they got there, because that's not the important thing. There's so much language frequently put on these situations about the how and not just like what to do next. And I think both of these films are kind of a really great look at the ways in which these things happen, and there's no blame in the how that you can put on these films. And I really thought that was really interesting. And that's the reason why I did find the external family, because often when you do hear stories of the houseless, there's usually an external family member in the background in narrative stories who's like saying something or clashing with them or something like that to kind of give context for the person. But like the films allowed their own individual stories be the context. So I thought that was very well done. Kind of like switching to like a more fun topic, maybe. What was the most fun day on shoot? Like what was one of a day that you remember that like makes you laugh or smile, or just a particular moment that you think of when I ask that question, what's the thing that pops into your head? I feel like they have, like, I feel like everyone has like their smile on their face, like they've thought of a specific moment. Celine, we'll start with you.
Oh, I think ours is the exact same day. It was one day. It was really hard being in the tunnel for 3 weeks underground because there was no natural light.
It's truly a black box of a tunnel, like, no natural, we didn't cover anything up. So, all the light down there is light that we brought in. So, yeah. So
that was, it's based on this real tunnel, the Freedom Tunnel from New York City on the west side between 125th Street and 72nd. And a lot, I should mention this has nothing to do with it. One quick thing is that the murals that are all down there are painted by a graffiti artist named Freedom, who the Freedom Tunnel was named for, this guy named Chris Pape, who came to Rochester, New York, where our tunnel is, and painted all these murals by hand. Some which were repeats from the actual Freedom Tunnel, where hundreds of people lived in the 80s and 90s, and some that he made specifically for ours. Yeah. Anyway, so I was just saying that the tunnel was super dark the whole time because this was like one of our final days.
Which day are you talking about though?
When the day it was water pipe and
I think so, yeah.
So on the first half of the day, we did the water pipe scene, and we obviously everything revolves around this little pumpkin who rolls the roost, and she like doesn't know a lot of people on set. She just really knows me and Logan, our DP and our AD. And then on that day, she took Ben, our AD's walkie, and apparently knew how to use it, was like, go to 2. And she was like, I love you to everyone. It was really cute. Anyway, and on that day, she was very upset about the water pipe because it was cold water. They'd rigged it.
What was the original action? She was supposed to be holding the bucket, right?
Yep. Yeah. And she just got really upset. And I was like, okay, just go over there. And so she went over there and she just started bouncing in puddles. And it was a really great exploration of what our crew was able to do in creating these 270 or 360 degree environments where she can just do whatever she wants.
Yeah, we were set up, for something so specific, and it's a scene you like imagined, for days and months and years of your life, of like, oh yeah, this is what this looks like exactly. And then it gets there and she's just like not into it.
We've been writing this script since like stupid time, like 2012 is the first draft. So like,
but like the ability to sort of like be open to like, okay, that's cool. And then Celine started flicking water at her, and then she'd flick water back and jump. And it was like infinitely better than anything we could have ever, conceived of. And that was like such a beautiful release of like, we've built everything that we need to have here, and we're literally able to just play. It was the kind of scene that we were able to just sort of like float with, and our DP is so amazing that, he was able to sort of capture, the essence of the scene, and it's totally not what we like went in thinking we were gonna get. But
she's so
way
naughty.
better.
She's so naughty.
Yeah.
And then the second half of that day, we made the house collapse, which was just such a huge, wonderful moment when our production designer had rigged the whole thing.
This is the same house that we needed to shoot like 12 scenes in, you know, so it had to be super strong, and so it was never meant to collapse. And once it was going to collapse, like we weren't going to have it again. So it was this very fateful decision of like, and we were like, no, we want to cut these bars so that it like actually, so it was like all these departments coming together at Shayla's like final 5 minutes on set, literally. And it was this like, whoa, and we like ran to do rig it, and these guys are gonna pull
and
the
Shayla
shack.
and I falling out, like we had to be
long
on the mat,
sort of run,
and then we had to run, and
it didn't fall once. We were like reset, and it's like her time is done. When we like roll,
our AD's like, so she has to go right now.
You know, and they like blow the smoke.
And we're like, don't cut the camera.
And we run, and the shack collapses, and it's this, and our camera is running backwards, and it's this super long shot, and the whole thing worked. And Shayla's time is up, and it was like I yelled cut like the craziest, like the most like, happiest cheered. Cut I've ever done in my life.
And everyone just was clapping and screaming, and we were all so happy, and Shayla was so happy.
Yeah, because like
she was jumping up and down. It was
she knew we had gotten it.
She knew, so yeah.
That was a great day.
It must have been both of you chose the exact same.
Yeah, you guys are
right. Well,
I was thinking there must have been something in New York, like something way like
no,
above
there
ground.
Was nothing in New York.
Because the tunnel was like, oh,
there were everything was really, really you know, harrowing. Our next film that we're casting now is a lot more fun.
Yeah.
But you know, we wanted to tell a story that was, you know, because we've met all these people, and it's not that easy. There's not a grandmother at the end of the road, you know? So it's like, how do you tell a story like that and keep some kind of happiness in it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, it sounds like it was a really cathartic day on set.
Yes.
Also, so that must have been, and you said that was close to the end of your production, or like the last second.
Yeah, it was. It was because we shot at John's house.
We shot all the New York stuff first. So it was about two weeks in New York doing the exteriors and the subway work. And then we had 3 weeks in the tunnel, which was upstate in Rochester, New York. It
was 32 days in total. And our production designer built that entire city underground from scratch. It was an empty tunnel.
Yeah.
So it was truly like a huge, huge undertaking that was very cathartic to make collapse.
Yeah.
Got it. We were all afraid of rodents. There were no rodents in the tunnel. Thank God Crafty was so clean, and like we ate outside, but like we were all super nervous all the time, and to leave that tunnel was like, whoa, you know?
Right. And then Kelley and Angelique, what were your, maybe they're the same day, maybe they're not, but like, what were your like fun days, favorite moments?
I don't know if they're the same. We'll see, won't we?
Go for it, Kelley. Go for it.
I have two favorites, but one was just tormenting Angelique on this hill bomb I had to do.
Oh.
The opening credit.
That's not my favorite day.
She was so petrified because I had to bomb this hill in roller skates, this massive hill that the kids in the area called like Devil's Hill or some stuff. Like, you can't, and it was so funny is that it's the opening credits of the skate sequence where the character is just having a good time because she thinks it's going to be a good day, you know, before all the crazy stuff happens. And there's this drone shot of Danny, my character, going down this long hill, and the drone shot, you can't see the grade of the hill as well, but that hill was a hill. And I remember Angelique driving up, and she's like, I'm in the passenger seat. They had me because my character wears headphones, so they were like, okay, we're gonna get on a 3-way call. We're gonna have our co-producer Julia at the bottom of the hill. She's going to be looking out for cars, and Angelique's like, I'm going to be at the top. And so while we're riding up the hill, it's like, if we go over a bump, she's like, that was a bump. Did you see that? Mark that by that tree. That's a bump. And then we drive, and she's like, that's another one. Do you see that? Get over these bumps. Like, she was freaking out. And then like when it was, because if I fell, that was going to be a good fall. And and we were going to have to probably write it in because I wasn't going to stop. So
lived. Like it was a
It was
hill.
like, even if Danny broke something, we were going to write that mess in because we were finishing the movie. So but like I hit the pavement and Angelique's like, all I heard was just gravel in the headphones because it's like going down it, and I had to jump over all of those bumps that she had highlighted because they were like sort of like there was like this bridge, so there's like a plate. It kind of changed from gravel to like cement, and so there's like this. And I was going at least, I would estimate in skates 25. It was fast because that grade was. So that was fun because when I survived, Angelique was like darn near about to faint. Like
I was like, one take wonder, we're not doing this again. We're moving on.
I kind of love that was your favorite, like your life was like in danger. You're like,
yeah, because I street skate. So like for me it was like, oh, this is great. I get to hill bomb this and try this hill, you know. But for her, she was like, oh hell nah. She's like, isn't there another street?
Yeah, I was like, if it were up to me, she'd be wearing a helmet and knee pads. And
Angelique again would take the camera sometimes, and like there was this tracking shot that she really wanted that Becky couldn't get because we didn't have the proper like type of dolly equipment to get, and it's in the opening. We call it wheels, wheels, wheels. So it's like before when she leaves, when she drops off her daughter, and she says today's gonna be a good day, and then it goes straight to wheels and it's just rolling, and then like the Alcoholics beat drops on the song. That wheels, wheels, wheels shot, Angelique put on her roller skates. I called her an armor truck. She puts on like, she got the helmet, she got the wrist guard, she got the elbow pads, she got the knee pads. And she took the camera and she like, cause she had to become physically the dolly because we didn't even have a dolly, you know? So, so she got the tracking shots in her roller skates, completely armored up while I'm in like these biker shorts.
Just holding the camera like right down on the street.
Yeah, she just got down and just like with her.
This was not a hill; it was a very smooth surface.
Yeah, she was on a smooth surface.
Fine. I was like, I'm still gearing up, guys.
But she still was in skates with a camera. Like that was so bomb to me. Like she was like, I'll do it, and she just put on all her like armored truck stuff, and then she just went. She went and did it. And then my second thing was the VFX into the water, falling into the puddle. That was a real street in a real like low-income housing project. And we had to create that puddle in the middle of the summer. We had to get all these 5-gallon barrels, fill it up. The sweet neighbors, they're so sweet. They let us use their hoses and let us help us to fill up that street. But there was still a lot of like trash and junk and like dirty napkins and all kind of stuff that was like washing down that drain gutter area. And I had to physically fall and lay in the dirty water every single time. And it wasn't like fun, but it was hilarious to me because like my face would be like inches from some napkin that like drifted down. And I had to freeze and I'd be like, Leek, can I get up yet? Because they had to do the VFX shot. So they had to make sure that the measurements and the camera move and all that stuff was, and she's like, nah, stay there. And here's this napkin like right by my face during COVID and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. I feel like Mai got a kick out of having me just lay there longer. That's one of our he was the one who was overseeing our.
It was also like 120 degrees. It was a heat wave going on and we had to pour water. It was such a waste.
It would evaporate.
It would just evaporate.
It would just each take.
Puddle.
It was so hot. We weren't acting when Little West was like, I'm hot. Like that wasn't, we were sweating through our stuff.
The heat across the whole film, it's like really, executed very, very well. We love seeing sweat on people. We hate the whole construct of like makeup in films and like people like looking presentable when they're not supposed to be. So we that was one of the first things we said when it ended. We were like, we loved all the sweat. It was probably real, but like
it was. We had a sweat spray bottle. We did,
but most of it.
Yeah. But we didn't really need it. It was so hot.
It was really hot.
What was yours, Leek?
So I know I just talked about how difficult the pool scene was, but I had a really, really good time. It was more difficult, like physically afterwards, but I love swimming and I love the water and I love like holding a camera. And it had been a while since I was able to shoot anything, obviously because we were in the middle of COVID. So I really enjoyed shooting again, one, and then also being under the water and kind of creating, like literally being in someone's backyard, but then being in a different world. So to me, that was like, we were really excited to start. We were all working well together. Like it just felt like, it felt good. You know, I was like, okay, this is the beginning because it's going to be great, you know, because we were doing we thought what we thought would be the toughest scene first. We're like, let's get this over with so that we can like move forward and be, you know, able to get everything done. But I mean, it kind of if we did that any other time, we probably wouldn't have finished. I think doing it in the beginning was actually the smartest thing, but just being in the water and shooting and, you know, being able to direct that scene was, to me, my favorite day.
She was like a mermaid, you guys. She took that camera and was just like all around me, and it was so much fun for me, because then I was like, oh, we moving? Okay. Like I was adjusting to what she was doing. She became this fish in the water and was just like down there and just doing all her little maneuvers. I was so impressed. It was fun.
Back to our feet.
Yeah, it was cold and painful, but fun.
It was cold and painful, but fun. It was weird. Yeah, I loved it. I mean, yeah.
It's like funny. We like the stuff we survived. I'm like, yeah, that hill bomb, 25 miles per hour in the skates, but great. Yeah.
You said you thought it would be your toughest screen, your toughest to shoot. What ended up being the toughest to shoot?
I mean, I think just in general, we were outside in 120 degrees every single day. I mean, it was like 100. Well, the 120 was like a couple of days, when like real crazy heat wave, but it was around 100 every day. And that was exhausting. You know, we obviously tried to make sure we had a little tiny cooler that we would just like lug around, because again, we didn't want to.
We didn't have Crafty.
We didn't have Crafty because
when y'all said Crafty, I was like, oh, Crafty. We couldn't do it.
Yeah, we ended up like literally it was like jack of all trades. We ended up getting these tote bags and individually putting in hand sanitizer, masks, snacks, food, and gave everybody an individual tote bag so that we didn't have to set up a Crafty and nobody had to have their hands.
It's not safe during COVID.
Yeah,
you can't have a table.
Touching anybody's food, that's not happening. So even lunch, like our producer Roma was like spraying everything down. Like,
everything down.
Yeah, it was, we were like, don't touch.
Giving individual.
So I think maybe like not as there, I can't pinpoint a specific, oh my God, difficult day over the pool scene versus the pool scene.
I can.
I think every day.
That fight scene kicked my butt.
That was intense too.
We had bruises for days, like, cause that was hard rocked sand that we were tumbling on. That mess hurt. Yeah, that was a hard scene.
Feels very, very real. A lot of those moves are like, whoa, like, yeah. It feels
the
like
knife in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, Angelique did really good with us on that. She was like real considerate of the pain we were going through, but she got everything that we needed. But that for me, that was right with the water.
Did you talk about it all? Like, how did you guys figure out that whole sequence with the fights? It's like quite complex.
Oh, we had a stunt coordinator.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, felt like it.
And Westcott, yeah, she's fantastic. She actually did stunts on Lalo's house too. Oh, cool. And so she came out and did that. But we were, Angelique, isn't that, we were supposed to be following her choreography, but then Brian, the guy was on fight, who also is a USC friend, who's also a DP, who just we invited to play that role to keep it in the family. He was falling for real. Remember, Leek?
But he had knee pads on underneath his jeans at least.
Yeah, he was cheating. I didn't have anything. And
oh my gosh.
So when he started falling for real, I started falling for real to match the fall for reals. And so like we followed the choreography, but we didn't necessarily follow the safety of the choreography after a while. We were really tumbling after a minute. We were like for real fighting each other.
Not with the real knife.
Not with the real knife. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we held for that, and I was very, very still. Yeah. So.
Speaking of like physical moments, there is the fight scene in Topside where your character like breaks. Well, it's not a long scene, but it's the scene where you kind of like it looks like you're gonna shoot up, and then you don't. Like, what was that scene like? Like when you kind of like will attack the dealer and then make a run for it.
It was pretty difficult actually because the item had to stick in his back.
The syringe, yeah.
But it also had to go in. So it had to be a retractable syringe thing, but we also had a lot of close-ups on it. So it had to look very real, but we switched it out.
Yeah, there's like, it's 3 shots or 2 shots worth of it that count. And so we had 3 different syringes. There was a real syringe that we used, and then there was one for the actual injection that was actually a magnet. And he had a magnet in his shirt
sewn into it
because it was you really needed to feel that impact, and so the only way to do that effectively was to completely kill the needle from that shot and have Celine sort of target a magnet on the back so that when she releases her hand, it stays there.
And then Logan we went through a lot of different versions of what the needle should be, but Logan added a needle in post.
Yeah,
Logan did. We had a great VFX guy who helped us out. But Logan did a lot of the VFX himself.
Tiny, little tweaks and stuff to be able to clean up.
Self-taught, wonderful. YouTube.
Fantastic.
But I got very bruised up just from the subway sequences in general.
Yeah.
I was not wearing knee pads either. Oh no. Oh, I had Lowell's knee pads on for part of it, but they were like hurt.
But there's just a lot that was very like physically taxing to a lot of the subway stuff for our DP as well. One day he was like, I don't know what we're still doing here. Yeah. he was going to be like subway, like
when it was just the 4 of us like riding the train over.
Like I feel like I've been in a subway for months.
It was like we did it in between going from Rochester or from New York City to Rochester. So we had like 4 days.
There was a 4-day buffer, and we were shooting for like 3 of them.
So we just went overnight we started at midnight and we went till like 4 a.m.
Yeah. And
we would just ride the subway the entire night. So that's how we shot all of that.
I actually rewound a part that like on the subway, because when you first return after you realize you lost little, like the doors closed and you come back, and you get off and you're running around to the other track and you get to the other train. I was like, did the camera follow that entire time? Like I had to rewind. I'm like, was there a cut? And the camera was with you on that whole run. And I was like, bravo to that DP, because it was so smooth. It was so well executed. Like you guys running up those stairs, he had to keep up.
He's brilliant. He got a waiver from the union to be our camera operator because he's and on what we're shooting now, there's a few shoulder portions in which he will operate. But he has a camera operator too here. But he's just he's beyond talented.
I think he's the only reason that like we've remotely been able to make anything that works.
Yeah. He's a
we're
big
like
deal.
go. We're like yeah, let's like do it. You know, like in this sort of like whatever way, and like he's the one who can actually like make it beautiful and like make it work. So it's like that. It's that sort of like healthy collaboration that is the only reason our stuff.
Another cool thing that maybe we don't get that maybe I'd like to just mention is that the booth is actually 2 different locations, which is just after. So we couldn't shoot in an actual booth because it's illegal. They're afraid that people will see how the buttons work, basically the MTA, so they don't allow you to shoot in a booth.
Yeah, so there was this very big sort of conversation of like, how do you pull off that sequence? You also can't record any MTA employee, but we can't put anyone inside of the booth, actor or otherwise. So
no one. And it was like, oh, our producers were full of ideas of like, oh, it should just be a random MTA person who's coming by. And for us, you'd go to the booth. Like there's no other option.
And those booth agents can't leave as well, which was part of the whole like, you know, crux of the scene, is that person can't help you at all, you know, besides being able to call somebody. So yeah, it was just, you know, again, credit to
our production
designer who built the booth on our stage day in Rochester, and it was sort of able to, and so the booth on the stage has green screen behind it. We got those plates, so you sort of quickly get into that coverage. And so all of Celine's coverage is she's actually
screaming at an actual booth attendant,
at an actual MTA employee on the other side of the coverage who's just like staring at her dead face, like not.
It's really hard because it was in our final 10 minutes of the day.
Yeah, those MTA days were just that was like a third of our budget. MTA is like so expensive, but it was very important that we did it on the MTA. So yeah.
It was just a lot of that is the day I lost my voice from screaming. So you can hear it. The next day we shot on the actual tracks with the Nikki John fight at the end of the film, and my voice is gone in that scene. But
how much did so you said that the entire city was built by the production designer, and the booths, were there other things that were, it sounds like the production designer like built insane amounts of sets, like what else was, like, did you know going in that you would need all those things built? Like, did you know like the MTA was like, you can't use the booth? Like, how did you come up with a plan, I guess, for the production design for?
She is Nora Mendes. She's we hope to work with her for the rest of our career. She's like super.
Considering the budget for it, you know, she moved heaven and earth to make, like, she also built all of Les's apartment. That was a completely bare apartment.
Empty
the
apartment
they go into was just like an empty rental that she filled with all of that. Just no small feet.
Like even filled the kitchen like with appliances that weren't there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just the MTA conversation of it all was super huge, because there's just so much logistics to like how you can change trains and what direction trains are going in and what subway station you exit. And it was very important that all sort of, you could track that sort of sequence of her searching, whether, you know, it's the colors of the poles of the different stations and what trains she could ride. So it sort of determined a lot. Like we spent a whole day looking for empty MTA booths, like an empty booth that we could sort of like
we both just took trains as far as we could go
and
trying to find booths.
So we came ultimately to this decision of like building the booth ourselves to be able to have total control, and then just ultimately shot that scene like 2 weeks apart. You know, the coverage of the MTA workers like 2 weeks after we shot your coverage.
You know, the subway train itself, like obviously there were huge conversations about being shot in the Transit Museum, which so many films and TV shows do.
Yeah.
But we can feel it. There's like a visceral feeling to not being in an actual train. And so we ended up shooting at a station where it was a live station. So we had real people getting on the trains right beside us. We could only use half the platform with all of our equipment and our crew. And all the ads in the subway train, obviously our production designer made and stuff, but the train specifically is a train that has mirrored walls with the orange and red seats, which was something we spent a really long time identifying and telling the MTA that that's the train we wanted. And Nikki only goes between orange and red seat trains rather than blue trains, because we wanted that was important for a color choice for us. The whole film hopefully has like a gold hue to it. That's like was a color that we were interested in.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the periphery, all that subway stuff that just like, it doesn't,
you'll never even notice.
It doesn't matter when you're watching it at all, but it was like so many logistical stuff to get to that point.
Yeah.
But it all worked out.
I just can't wait to rewatch the films again. One of the positives of being in the virtual environment is I've got the blues and greens to pay attention to more. And then I've got these oranges to like, I'm now gonna read all the subway stuff.
Right.
See what's going on into it.
Don't tell us if you find an error.
Yeah.
Did you guys have any intention with the purple fingernail polish? Was that color on purpose?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was something that we wanted to, it was, you know, purple is royalty, right?
Yeah.
And so there was definitely something for us where Nikki has that color and she leaves that polish for a little because she's been admiring her polish, which is a line that we ended up cutting.
Yeah, I don't think it's in this.
So yeah. So that, yeah.
You cut it, but I still saw that they both had the same polish. So it still hit. even without it being said. Yeah.
She painted her own nails. That was really funny.
Yeah.
Just really not. No one's good at painting their own nails, but a child, especially a little baby 6-year-old, she doesn't know what she's doing. It's really fun. She had a great time that day.
I mean, I think that that was one of the split scenes. You kind of see, I'm assuming, what happened when she initially tried to paint her nails. You kind of see paint all over her fingernails. And I'm just kind of like, yes. I've seen my nieces and younger siblings attempt to paint their nails.
It kind of it played into the quote that you had at the beginning of we don't have children here, we have adults as young as 5. And so it was just her being an adult to me, and then her going to charge her own little iPad device was like being an adult. Her going and chatting about the dogs was being an adult. So like it just was like these little details that kind of played into the very intro that that I liked.
Speaking of things that were cut, we are starting to get a little closer to our end time, but I wanted to know, were there any moments that you couldn't keep within the film that like you wanted to, it just didn't work? Were there any moments that you can think of? I know it's got so much footage in Topside.
Yeah.
So
there were so many. There was this beautiful moment that I still love that may actually make it in the trailer, where she touches this mural as she walks by, and it's a mural that you never see in the film, unfortunately. That was so big and beautiful. It's Venus de Milo bust and David that was in the actual Freedom Tunnel. That's just really iconic, stunning image.
Yeah, it's wild how you have to. It takes. I mean, we edited it for a fair amount of time and
many months.
And the ability to sort of be able to take a step back and recognize, like, as much as there's an entire character that has like way more lines in the tunnel, but it just like you sort of have to hit these beats when you watch the film from start to finish, and it was really important to be getting out of the tunnel at a certain time, so we just like couldn't give that time to that character.
That person does not fully know yet. They saw an earlier cut and we still need to tell them, and that's like a really hard conversation. Actors get cut all the time, and for no, in big movies,
not for like performance reason. It's purely like an editorial thing of just like feeling the ebb and flow of the story. So yeah, definitely in the tunnel, that sort of first 20 minutes, 25 minutes is
everything
like
else is as really just exactly what we shot.
Yeah.
Except a ton of train stuff. Yeah, it was not a ton of me weeping on different trains. We could make a whole hour-and-a-half movie of me just weeping on trains.
Wouldn't be fun. No, we don't want that. Yeah.
For Kelley and Angelique, were there moments that were cut that you couldn't keep?
It's a little different for us, huh, Lee?
Yeah, I feel like more shots versus whole scenes, or like definitely, again, my underwater fave. There are certain things where I was just like, can we just add this? And it's like, it's already getting too long. So like, there's definitely shots that I wanted to add, like under the underwater scene, skate shots that I wanted to add. So not whole scenes, but definitely different moments where like, oh, this was so great and it felt good on set, but it just didn't serve to put it into the final cut.
Yeah, I would say definitely shots. But for us, it was a little bit of the opposite. We had to go create more because we came up with this story immediately. So when I called them, that's when we came up with it. We outlined this film. And so we started shooting 2 weeks after we came up with the concept. So a week and a half, we was like, okay, let's go. And so we're very different. We did not follow traditional filmmaking that we've learned. We kind of Picasso'd this, is like we learned the rules and then we threw it out the window. And so we thought initially that in the first version that we shot, we thought that the Jacob scene was going to be the climax. So when we saw it, when our editors laid it out, because remember, we were telling you that our editors were like laying this out as we were shooting and such. We watched it back and we're like, this just isn't hitting. It looks like a midpoint sort of problem, but not the climax. It just wasn't there. And so went back to the drawing board, and we're like, she needs to be really pressed between a rock and a hard place even more to sell this ring. Like, she needs to see the dangers of her pride, that in keeping this ring and not telling people what she needs, that could risk her daughter's life. So like with the fight scene, that did that, you know, because what if she came back to that tent with her daughter? What if he wanted to rob her and her daughter? Would she have, you know what I mean? So it's like this, even though she set up this tent so far away, it wasn't safe. So, and that's what we really needed to do. And so, but by doing that, we then had to add other scenes to make it make sense. So we had to add 2 more Brooklyn scenes, which we love because Brooklyn's fantastic. So that was great. So when she comes back to Brooklyn, when Brooklyn finds the ring, and the part where she comes back after she's been tossed, and you know, and then we had to add the tree scene, which was a tree that my sister actually got married under in that same area. And I knew that this tree was like tucked away at the back of this park. And I loved this tree ever since my sister got married under it. And it was like, Angelique and I knew we had to slow the story down. And it was like, well, maybe she can just go decompress in nature, because it's this nature again that we were trying to get back to. And I knew that this was hidden away. So we wanted a jib arm to like go up to the tree where she was. And that's one thing we splurged on, was that jib arm for the fight scene and the tree scene. It was to say, we just did it, I think back-to-back days. And I knew that there were these bushes in the back of the park by that tree that fit the length of the jib arm. So if the police rolled by, the jib arm was hidden by the bushes, and we all sat still, and I'm like in the trees still, and like the police would like roll by, but they couldn't see past the bush. And then once they were clear, we're like, okay, jib arm up. And we were like, so these were just things that we had to add. And that ended up making the movie what it is. Was that extra 5 days, because there were a few pickups, but it was mainly we had to add scenes to make the movie feel more complete. So we were kind of in a bit of an opposite situation.
I do remember what I missed now because of that. Because when we did add things, we had to take away a specific scene that I loved. Of when
it's in the trailer.
It's in the trailer, and it's also in the montage now, instead of like, there's still moments from it that are there. Yep. But like West did such a great job. Like it was just such a great scene where, you know, initially Danny was telling her daughter that she ended up having to tell her their situation. Mm-hmm. And it was her telling her what was going on, and her kind of just taking it and then deciding to go sell the ring. But that I don't miss it because it doesn't make sense now, but it was such a great scene.
The performances were great.
Performances were great. And when we were planning on having the movie go in a certain direction, I felt like it was perfect.
Yeah. So we ended up stealing those nonverbal expressions from that scene that Angelique's talking about and put it in the montage. It's where Wesley is like holding Bear, and she's like really like sad and pouty, and I'm like bent over talking to her. It was a really sweet, intimate scene that we had to cut, but it ended up for the best, and we ended up using it in the montage in the trailer. So we had to use everything. We were like, it's like using leftovers in the kitchen for next meal.
I mean, the film doesn't feel like any leftovers. So I think that is, it feels completely like just a really lovely full story. And you kind of, and I agree that fight scene was like a really great moment of, she needs to sell this ring. So like, because like, this is untenable. What if she just picked up her daughter? Like, what would happen next? So I thought that was very well done. And it's really interesting to see, like, watching the film and then realizing you needed more, you needed something different. I like that in both of your filmmaking process, you talk about how kind of letting the film also like as you're making it, as you were talking with your young actress and as you were in the process of doing it, kind of letting the film change for you a bit and like not being so stuck in like what you originally thought what the film is, because the end product's so stunning. So you made all the right choices. So thank you very much. Unfortunately, I've like used up all the time. So I could talk with all four of you forever, but we have to let people be free. But thank you so much for your amazing and beautiful films. It was such a pleasure to see them. If you, for the people who are watching this, if you haven't seen it yet, you can, I mean, a lot of spoilers, but you can watch it.
I know.
You can watch it now. If you have seen it, watch it again, because you now have so much more context for a good portions of the film. But thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Faridah.
Guys.
Yeah, good to see you guys again.